Hey guys, tonight we're not just unwinding, we're time traveling. Imagine slipping into your coziest blanket, the world outside fading into a soft blur, as you prepare for a journey not just through time, but through taste. We're about to peel back the layers of history, all the way back to Mesoamerica, to uncover the true origins of something you probably take for granted: chocolate. But here's the reality check, the cheeky little twist to our bedtime story. If you were transported back to ancient Mesoamerica right now, your survival odds based on chocolate cravings alone would be slim. Because the chocolate they knew, well, it was a far cry from your favorite candy bar. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment below. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You close your eyes, and the familiar scent of your room, maybe a hint of lavender or fresh laundry, begins to dissipate. Slowly, subtly, the air shifts. It grows warmer, humid, carrying the damp, earthy fragrance of rich soil and dense, green foliage. You're not in your bed anymore, not really. You're standing on the precipice of a vast, emerald world, a world teeming with life, where ancient secrets whisper on the wind. This isn't the clean, sterile aisle of your local supermarket, lined with neatly packaged chocolate bars promising everything from creamy caramel to crunchy almonds. Oh no, this is the heart of Mesoamerica thousands of years ago. And trust me, if you're expecting a Hershey's kiss, you're in for a very, very rude awakening. Forget the smooth, melt-in-your-mouth sweetness you associate with chocolate. Erase the memory of that comforting hot cocoa on a chilly evening, brimming with sugar and perhaps a dollop of whipped cream. Let go of the very notion that chocolate is a dessert, a treat, a guilty pleasure. Because in the world we're stepping into, chocolate was none of those things. It was something entirely different, something almost alien to our modern palates, yet utterly central to the lives of the people who first encountered it. Imagine someone handing you a cup, dark and frothy, with a pungent, earthy aroma. You take a sip, expecting that familiar burst of sweetness, that creamy texture, and instead, your taste buds are assaulted by an intense bitterness, perhaps a hint of spice, maybe even a smoky undertone. You'd probably spit it out faster than a toddler trying broccoli for the first time. Wouldn't you? That, my friends, is your first unfiltered introduction to ancient Mesoamerican chocolate. This fundamental difference is perhaps the most crucial thing to grasp as we begin our journey. For thousands of years, the inhabitants of this lush region, from the Olmecs to the Mayans and the Aztecs, consumed chocolate primarily as a bitter, unsweetened beverage. There was no refined sugar in their world, no dairy milk to soften the edges, no complex machinery to create smooth, solid bars. Instead, their chocolate was a powerful, invigorating, and often sacred drink. It was a far cry from the comforting indulgence we know today. It was a potent brew, sometimes mixed with chili peppers, vanilla, or even flowers, but almost never with anything resembling the sweetness we crave. You might even find yourself wondering, as you mentally recoil from the idea of spicy, bitter chocolate, how on earth it ever became the global phenomenon it is today. And that, my friends, is precisely what makes this journey so fascinating. As you mentally adjust to this new reality, you can almost feel the humid air on your skin, hear the distant calls of exotic birds echoing through the dense canopy. This isn't just a historical lecture, it's an immersion. We're going to explore a time when chocolate wasn't just a commodity, but a cornerstone of civilization, a vital part of daily life, rituals, and even economy. And it all began with a rather unassuming tree, the Theobroma cacao, which translates, rather poetically, to food of the gods. A name you'll soon realize that was entirely deserved, even if the food part didn't involve a sugary glaze. Think about your relationship with chocolate now. It's a pick-me-up, a reward, a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. For the ancient Mesoamericans, it was that, but so much more, and in a completely different way. It was a source of energy for warriors, a ceremonial offering to deities, a symbol of status for the elite, and even, in some cases, a form of currency. Imagine trying to buy groceries with a handful of cocoa beans. Your local barista might look at you funny if you tried to pay for your latte with them today. But back then, those beans were gold. Well, not gold, but something equally valuable. The journey we're embarking on isn't just about learning facts. It's about shifting your perspective. It's about understanding how something so familiar to us could have had such a radically different meaning and form in another time and culture. It's about appreciating the ingenuity of ancient peoples who, without our modern technology or even our basic understanding of chemistry, managed to transform a bitter bean into a revered substance. This wasn't some accidental discovery, like leaving a bag of beans out in the sun and finding they tasted better. This was a complex, multi-stage process, honed over millennia, a true testament to human curiosity and perseverance. Historians still debate the precise moment when humans first began to truly appreciate the cacao bean beyond its pulp, whether it was purely accidental or through a series of intentional experiments. Was it a happy accident of fermentation, a forgotten pod left to rot that yielded something intriguing? Or was it a methodical exploration of a new plant, driven by an innate desire to unlock its secrets? The earliest archaeological evidence of cacao use dates back over 3,500 years, found in pottery fragments from the Olmec civilization, suggesting that they were likely the pioneers in processing this miraculous bean. But how they got from this wild fruit to this complex, ritualistic beverage is where the story truly begins to unravel its mysteries. As you settle deeper into this imagined journey, you might wonder about the sheer effort involved. No instant coffee here, no pre-ground cocoa powder. Every step, from finding the pods in the dense jungle to transforming the beans into a drink, was an arduous, labor-intensive process. It required deep knowledge of the environment, patience, and a surprising amount of scientific understanding, even if it wasn't codified in textbooks. The ancient Mesoamericans were, in their own right, master food scientists. They understood fermentation, roasting, and grinding long before those terms even existed in our lexicon. They didn't have fancy lab equipment, just keen observation, trial and error, and generations of accumulated wisdom. So, as the sounds of the ancient jungle gently lull you further into this historical reverie, let go of your preconceived notions. Open your mind to a chocolate that is robust, unadulterated, and profoundly powerful. Imagine the taste of something that isn't designed to be sweet, but to be strong, to be invigorating, to connect you to the earth and to the gods. This is not the chocolate you sneak from the pantry at midnight. This is a beverage of warriors, of priests, of kings. It's a bitter, frothy elixir that fueled empires and shaped cultures. And as we continue our journey, you'll discover just how central this food of the gods truly was. Don't worry, no pop quizzes on cacao bean taxonomy tonight. Just pure, unadulterated historical chill. Alright, settle in a little deeper, because now we're really going to slow down and sink into the very beginning of our story. Imagine you're not just listening, but you're there, standing on the edge of a world that feels ancient and alive. A world where the air hangs thick and warm, smelling of damp earth and verdant growth. You're not in a perfectly manicured orchard. Oh no. You're trudging softly, your bare feet sinking slightly into the rich, dark soil of a lowland tropical rainforest. This isn't just any forest. This is the ancestral home, the very cradle of the cacao tree. You hear the symphony of the jungle around you, the distant calls of unseen birds, the buzz of unseen insects, the gentle drip of moisture from leaves that seem perpetually glistening. It's a place of constant humidity, a benevolent, warm blanket that never quite lifts. Think of it like a really luxurious, never-ending spa day for plants. For the cacao tree, specifically, this isn't just a preference. It's a non-negotiable requirement. You see, Theobroma cacao, as botanists would later classify it, which rather charmingly translates to food of the gods, is a remarkably particular plant. It's not one for bright, direct sunlight. Oh no, that would just be too much effort. Instead, you find it nestled comfortably in the understory, shaded by the towering canopy trees that form a protective, leafy umbrella above. It's a bit like that one friend who always insists on sitting in the shade at the beach, even if everyone else is baking in the sun. The cacao tree just knows what it likes. As you gaze around, you notice the conditions that make this environment so uniquely perfect. The temperature here rarely dips below 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and frost? Forget about it. A single frost could spell disaster for an entire cacao crop, like a bad hair day that lasts for months. The rainfall is abundant, consistent, and generous, ensuring the soil remains perpetually moist but, crucially, well-drained. Imagine a sponge that's always wet but never waterlogged. That's what the cacao tree dreams of. And the soil itself? It's usually volcanic in origin, rich in organic matter, and teeming with nutrients, a kind of superfood for plants. It's almost as if the earth itself conspired to create the ideal nursery for this future global superstar. You might wonder how such a fussy plant managed to spread across a continent. Well, historians still argue whether the cacao tree was first domesticated in the upper Amazon basin or the Orinoco River system in what is now South America, with archaeological evidence pointing to very early use in Ecuador. However, its journey northward into Mesoamerica, the region encompassing parts of modern-day Mexico and Central America, is a fascinating tale of natural migration and, eventually, human cultivation. It wasn't a sudden leap. It was a slow, steady expansion, likely carried by animals or even early human travelers who recognized its potential. Think of it as the ultimate slow travel influencer, making its way north one delicious pod at a time. Now, let's take a closer look at the tree itself. You notice its relatively slender trunk, often branching low to the ground. The leaves are large, glossy, and a deep green, perfectly designed to capture the dappled light filtering through the canopy above. And then there are the flowers. They're tiny, often no bigger than your pinky nail, and they bloom directly on the trunk and older branches, a phenomenon known as cauliflory. It's a bit of an oddity, isn't it? Like finding apples growing out of the main stem of an apple tree instead of the branches. This quirky growth habit is actually quite practical for its primary pollinators. Tiny, almost invisible midges. These little insects, no bigger than a pinhead, are the unsung heroes of the cacao world, flitting from flower to flower, ensuring the tree's future. It's a delicate dance, and if you don't have the right midge, you don't get the pod. It's enough to make you appreciate every chocolate bar just a little bit more, knowing the microscopic effort that went into it. The cacao tree is not a solitary creature. It thrives in a diverse ecosystem, surrounded by other plants that provide the necessary shade and humidity. You'll find it living in harmony with taller trees like rubber trees, mangoes, or even other native rainforest giants that act as its protective guardians, shielding it from the harsh midday sun. This symbiotic relationship is crucial. It's a community effort to grow the perfect cacao pod. It's like a well-oiled team where everyone plays their part, from the giant canopy trees providing shade to the tiny midges doing the pollination work. If one piece is missing, the whole system wobbles. This unique environment, this specific combination of heat, humidity, shade, and rich soil, is what initially made the cacao tree so special to the ancient peoples of Mesoamerica. It wasn't just another fruit or nut. It was a gift from the gods, a plant that only flourished in very particular, often sacred, conditions. Its demanding nature, its specific habitat, and the sheer effort involved in growing it outside of its natural range only added to its mystique and value. It wasn't something you could just plant anywhere and expect it to thrive like a dandelion. Oh no, this was a high-maintenance diva of the plant world, and its demands were precisely what made it so revered. You could almost hear the ancient priests whispering, "This isn't just food. This is sacred food." And truly it was. The very environment that birthed it imbued it with a sense of divinity, setting the stage for it to become a cornerstone of civilizations, far beyond just being a tasty treat. It was a plant that shaped landscapes, economies, and beliefs, all thanks to its incredibly specific, pampered upbringing in the heart of the rainforest. All right, settle in a little deeper because now we're going to step back even further to a time before great empires, to the very first moments when humanity and the cacao tree truly connected. Imagine yourself not as a modern person with a phone in your pocket and a desire for Wi-Fi, but as an early inhabitant of these lush, verdant lands. You're navigating the dense, humid jungle, perhaps foraging for food, perhaps tracking game. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth, exotic blossoms, and unseen life. You're attuned to every rustle, every flicker of color in the emerald canopy. And then it happens. Your eyes, accustomed to spotting the unusual, catch sight of something remarkable. Not hanging from branches like typical fruit, but directly from the trunk and thick limbs of a tree, bright, elongated pods burst forth. They're like nature's own decorative ornaments, in shades of vibrant yellow, deep red, or mottled green. This is the cacao pod, in its wild, untamed state. You approach cautiously, perhaps observing how local wildlife, monkeys, peccaries, even squirrels, seem to enjoy gnawing on these very pods. This is your first encounter. Curiosity, that timeless spark of human ingenuity, compels you to investigate. You pick one, heavy in your hand. The outer rind is tough, almost leathery. How do you get inside? Perhaps you use a sharp stone, or maybe you just drop it, hoping it will crack open. When it finally yields, you're greeted by a surprising sight. A cluster of pale, almond-shaped beans, each one encased in a sticky, sweet, white pulp. It's not what you expected. You tentatively taste the pulp. It's sweet, tangy, and refreshingly delicious, a natural jungle candy. It's like a tropical sorbet in a pod, truly a delightful discovery. You might even share it with your companions, a fleeting moment of sweetness in a world often defined by struggle. At this point, you're probably spitting out the bitter beans. Why would you eat those? They're encased in that lovely pulp, but the beans themselves are unappetizingly bitter and astringent. Your ancestors were, after all, practical people. They weren't looking to invent a chocolate bar. They were just trying to find something tasty to eat. But here's where the story gets interesting, and where the first crucial step in understanding the cacao bean began. You see, those discarded beans, sometimes left in piles, or just dropped on the warm, humid jungle floor, didn't just disappear. They started to transform. This is where the magic of fermentation enters the picture. Imagine a pile of those sweet, pulpy beans, perhaps left by accident or simply because you'd eaten all the delicious pulp. In the tropical heat and humidity, the natural yeasts and bacteria present in the environment, and on the pods themselves, would begin to work their wonders. The sugary pulp would start to ferment, breaking down, liquefying, and eventually draining away. This process, which can take several days, isn't just about removing the pulp. It's about kickstarting the complex chemical reactions inside the beans. It's the first, most fundamental step in developing those deep, rich chocolate flavors that are still locked away. Without fermentation, you don't get anything resembling chocolate. You just get bitter beans. It's like your ancestors were basically pioneering the world's most delicious happy accidents, long before anyone understood microbiology. Over time, these early inhabitants wouldn't just observe this natural process. They'd begin to understand it, perhaps even replicate it. They might start intentionally piling the pods or beans, recognizing that this transformation was key. This shows a profound level of observation and nascent agricultural understanding. It's not just about finding food. It's about managing it, about coaxing nature to reveal its secrets. This shift from mere gathering to rudimentary cultivation, while perhaps not as dramatic as planting vast fields, was pivotal. You're not just hoping to stumble upon a cacao tree. You're starting to ensure its presence. After fermentation, the beans would still be quite moist. So what's the next logical step in a warm, sunny climate? Drying. You'd spread them out on mats or flat stones under the tropical sun. This would prevent mold and allow the beans to be stored for longer periods. Now you have a storable, raw cacao bean, transformed by fermentation and dried by the sun. But still, if you tried to eat one, it would be intensely bitter, perhaps even a bit chalky. Not exactly a delightful snack. This brings us to another critical discovery. Roasting. How did they figure this out? Perhaps some dried beans accidentally fell into a cooking fire. Or maybe, in an attempt to dry them faster or more thoroughly, they were intentionally placed near a heat source. And then, it hits you, that incredible aroma. As the beans heat up, their chemical composition changes dramatically. They crackle, they pop, and suddenly your entire jungle encampment smells less like damp earth and more like Well, like the inside of a fancy coffee shop, but with a hint of ancient mystery. The bitterness mellows, and a complex, rich, earthy scent emerges. This is the scent of chocolate, raw and unrefined, but undeniably present. Roasting also makes the beans brittle, easier to crush. With roasted beans in hand, the next step was grinding. Early peoples would have used tools readily available: a metate and mano, essentially a large, flat stone slab and a cylindrical handstone. You'd place the roasted beans on the metate and grind them with the mano, applying pressure and working the beans back and forth. It's hard work, requiring strength and patience. Initially, you might get a coarse powder, but with persistence, and as the natural fats within the beans are released by the friction, that powder slowly, miraculously, transforms into a thick, dark, oily paste. This is the pure, unadulterated essence of chocolate. It's not quite a chocolate bar yet, but you're getting there. Think of it as the original bean-to-bar movement, just without the artisanal labels and the ironic mustaches. The exact timeline for these discoveries is still a subject of scholarly debate, with archaeologists constantly unearthing new clues, refining our understanding of who first truly mastered the cacao bean. However, evidence suggests that the earliest use of cacao, specifically in the form of residues found in pottery vessels, dates back to around 1900 BC in what is now modern-day Ecuador, and slightly later, around 1500 BC, in Mesoamerica itself among groups like the Mochaya people. This indicates a very long period of experimentation and refinement. It wasn't an overnight epiphany. It was generations of trial, error, and shared knowledge. But why go through all this trouble for a bitter paste? This is where the mysterious properties come into play. When consumed, this paste, or more likely a drink made from it, would have produced noticeable effects. Cacao contains stimulating compounds like theobromine and caffeine. You'd feel a surge of energy, a heightened sense of alertness, perhaps even a mild euphoria. It wasn't just food. It was something that changed you. It offered endurance, clarity, a feeling of invigoration. Imagine the profound impact this would have had on early societies, where physical stamina and mental acuity were directly linked to survival. It's like they invented coffee before they invented sugar. Talk about a bracing start to your day. This combination of a unique flavor, an invigorating effect, and the sheer effort required to transform the raw pod into a usable product elevated cacao beyond mere sustenance. It became something special, something powerful. It was a gift from the earth, a source of strength, and a bridge to other realms. You've unlocked the secrets of the cacao pod, transforming a wild jungle fruit into a potent, life-altering substance. And with this profound understanding, the stage is set for civilizations to embrace and elevate chocolate to an even higher, more sacred status. Now, as you gently drift deeper into the ancient world, picture yourself stepping through a shimmering portal, not into a bustling city, but into the steamy, verdant lowlands of Mesoamerica's Gulf Coast. The air hangs thick and humid, heavy with the scent of damp earth and unseen blossoms. This is the heartland of the Olmec civilization, often heralded as the mother culture of Mesoamerica. The true pioneers whose monumental stone heads still gaze out from the jungle, silently guarding secrets thousands of years old. You're not just observing. You're practically feeling the mud squish between your toes as you journey back to a time when human ingenuity was just beginning to unlock the mysteries of the natural world. Imagine, if you will, being an early Olmec, perhaps around 1500 BC. You're navigating this dense, vibrant landscape, where towering trees form a cathedral canopy overhead, dappling the jungle floor with fragmented sunlight. It's hot, yes, but there's a sense of discovery in every rustle of leaves, every unfamiliar call of a bird. You've long since learned which plants offer sustenance, which provide medicine, and which, well, you probably just avoid entirely because they look a bit too spiky. But then, somewhere amidst this botanical bounty, you stumble upon a tree unlike any other. Its trunk is relatively slender, but directly from its sprout these elongated, football-shaped pods, a riot of colors from green to yellow to a deep, earthy red. This, my friend, is the Theobroma cacao tree, and it's about to change everything. The Olmecs, with their keen observational skills and deep connection to their environment, were the first to truly look at these pods and think, what's inside there? Anyway, you might initially be drawn to the sweet, pulpy white fruit surrounding the beans, a delicious treat in its own right, perhaps even fermented into a light, refreshing beverage. But it's the seeds, those humble beans nestled within that pulp, that held the real magic. Unlike a modern grocery shopper who expects their chocolate to arrive in neat, pre-packaged bars, the Olmecs had to figure out this entire process from scratch. It wasn't a quick, aha moment, more like a slow, deliberate, centuries-long aha. And then this, archaeological evidence, particularly from sites like El Manati and Paso de la Amada, has unearthed the earliest known traces of cacao use, pushing its origins back much further than previously thought, to around 1900 to 1800 BCE. So, while the Mayans and Aztecs often get all the chocolate glory, it was these quiet, industrious Olmecs who were the true trailblazers. Think of them as the unsung heroes of the chocolate world, the original beta testers who bravely consumed something that probably tasted like bitter dirt mixed with ambition before anyone else did. You can almost hear them now, trying to convince their friends, "No, really, Bartholomew. It's good once you get past the raw bean stage." So, how did they go from a bitter bean to something consumable? This is where the Olmecs' foundational contributions come into play. They understood, through trial and error and probably a lot of grimacing, that the fresh beans themselves weren't particularly appealing. They likely discovered the crucial step of fermentation by accident. Perhaps a pile of pods was left in the tropical heat, and the pulp began to break down, warming the beans and initiating that magical chemical transformation. You can imagine the smell, a rich, fruity, slightly alcoholic aroma wafting through the jungle. This wasn't just rotting, it was alchemy. This fermentation process, still vital today, develops the complex flavors and aromas that are the hallmark of chocolate. Without it, you're just chewing on a very bitter, slightly slimy seed. It's like trying to make wine by just crushing grapes and calling it a day. It just doesn't work. After fermentation, the beans would have been dried, likely spread out on mats under the tropical sun. This step was essential for preservation, preventing mold and preparing the beans for the next transformative stage. Roasting. While direct archaeological evidence for Olmec roasting kills specifically for cacao is elusive, it's highly probable they employed similar techniques used for other foodstuffs. Roasting would have intensified the flavor, made the beans more brittle, and allowed the outer husks to be easily removed. Imagine the Olmec kitchens, perhaps a simple hearth, with the rich, nutty scent of roasting cacao beans filling the air. It's a smell that would have signaled not just food, but something special, something ceremonial. This wasn't just snack time, it was an event. Then came the grinding. Armed with stone tools, likely a mano, hand stone, and metate, grinding stone, the Olmecs would have painstakingly ground the roasted, husked beans into a paste. This wasn't a quick job. It would have been a labor of love, or perhaps just a very long afternoon. The oils within the beans would have been released, creating a thick, rich mass. This paste, the very first form of ground chocolate, was the raw material for their early concoctions. You can almost feel the rhythmic scraping of stone on stone, the effort required to transform those hard beans into a smooth, dark paste. It wasn't a KitchenAid mixer, that's for sure. What did they do with this proto-chocolate paste? The most widely accepted theory, supported by residue analysis on Olmec pottery, is that they primarily consumed it as a beverage. But don't picture a sweet, creamy hot chocolate from your local coffee shop. Oh no, this was a whole different beast. The Olmecs likely mixed their cacao paste with water, perhaps with ground corn or chili peppers for an invigorating, bitter, and somewhat spicy drink. This was no bedtime treat. This was a wake-up call in a cup. Think of it as the original energy drink, minus the fluorescent colors and questionable ingredients. It was probably quite frothy, too, though the elaborate pouring techniques of later civilizations were still centuries away. Still, the Olmecs were likely the first to appreciate that a good froth adds a certain je ne sais quoi to a bitter brew. This early cacao beverage wasn't just for quenching thirst. For the Olmecs, it held significant social and probably spiritual importance. While we lack the extensive written records of later Mayan and Aztec cultures, the archaeological context suggests that cacao was not an everyday commodity for everyone. It was likely a drink of the elite, used in rituals, feasts, and perhaps as an offering. Imagine a chieftain, adorned with jade and feathers, raising a simple, unadorned ceramic cup to his lips, partaking in this potent, stimulating drink. It would have solidified his status, connecting him to the earth's bounty and perhaps to the divine. Historians still argue whether the Olmecs were the sole originators of all these cacao processing steps or if some knowledge was exchanged with neighboring groups. The truth is, the exact sequence of discovery and refinement is a bit like trying to piece together a puzzle where half the pieces are missing and the other half are covered in mud. But what is clear is that the Olmecs laid the essential groundwork. They were the ones who first understood that these unassuming beans, when properly fermented, dried, roasted, and ground, could yield something truly remarkable. They recognized its potential not just as a foodstuff, but as something with deeper significance. Their colossal heads, those iconic sculptures, often depict individuals with a certain stoic power. It's tempting to imagine that perhaps some of that power was fueled by the invigorating kick of their early cacao brews. This wasn't just a discovery. It was the birth of an entire culinary and cultural tradition. The Olmecs didn't just find cacao. They began its transformation from a wild plant into a cornerstone of Mesoamerican civilization. They were the original chocolate whisperers, coaxing out its hidden complexities, even if their final product would make a modern chocoholic raise an eyebrow and politely ask, "Are you sure this is chocolate?" Yes, dear listener, they were sure. And for that, we owe them a very bitter, yet deeply grateful nod. As our gentle journey continues, you find yourself drifting from the foundational world of the Olmecs, those quiet pioneers, and floating eastward, deeper into the verdant heart of Mesoamerica. You arrive, almost imperceptibly, in the sophisticated, sprawling cities of the Maya, a civilization renowned for its intricate calendars, soaring pyramids, and, of course, its profound relationship with the cacao tree. Here, the humble cacao pod wasn't just a foodstuff. It was woven into the very fabric of existence, a sacred thread running through every aspect of life. Imagine, if you will, a world where your morning coffee was also your spiritual offering, your currency, and your most potent medicine. Pretty efficient, right? Though I suspect your barista might balk at the idea of accepting beans as payment. In the Mayan world, cacao wasn't merely consumed. It was revered. You see it depicted everywhere. On ornate ceramic vessels, carved into stele, even in the intricate hieroglyphs that tell their stories. It's like their version of the ubiquitous coffee cup logo, but with far more spiritual gravitas. This wasn't just a drink. It was a conduit to the divine, a symbol of life, fertility, and even death. When you consider the sheer effort involved in cultivating and processing it, which we'll get to, don't worry, it makes perfect sense that it held such immense value. It wasn't just about taste. It was about the journey, the transformation, the essence of the plant itself. Let's delve into the heart of Mayan cacao's sacred role. You watch as a priest, adorned in elaborate jade and quetzal feathers, carefully pours a dark, frothy liquid from one ornate vessel to another, creating a cascade of bubbles that shimmer in the torchlight. This isn't just a show. It's a ritual, a performance. For the Maya, chocolate was central to nearly every significant ceremony. You see it offered to deities like Cacao, the god of lightning and serpents, often associated with royal power and lineage. It was believed to nourish the gods, ensuring their continued benevolence, much like how a particularly good cup of tea can make you feel benevolent on a Monday morning. Consider the profound significance of cacao in their creation myths. You might listen to the retelling of the Popol Vuh, the sacred book of the Kich Maya, where the hero twins, Hunahpu and Xbalanque, are said to have emerged from a cacao tree after their father was tragically defeated in the underworld. It's a powerful narrative, intertwining life, death, and rebirth with the very essence of cacao. This isn't just a fun story. It imbues the plant with an almost mythical status, elevating it beyond mere sustenance. It's like finding out your favorite snack was also responsible for inventing the wheel. Suddenly, that bag of chips feels a lot more important, doesn't it? Beyond the grand religious ceremonies, cacao permeated Mayan life cycle rituals. You observe it being used in rites of passage, perhaps at birth, to bless a newborn with strength and prosperity, or during puberty ceremonies, marking the transition into adulthood. And poignantly, it was a vital component of funerary practices. You might see the elite interred with vessels of chocolate, or even cacao beans themselves, meant to sustain them on their journey through the underworld. It was the ultimate send-off, ensuring the deceased had a well-stocked pantry for the afterlife. Historians still gently bicker over the exact number of cacao beans one might need for such a journey, but it was certainly more than pocket change. Now imagine the feasts. Oh, the feasts! These weren't just gatherings for a quick bite. They were elaborate social and political events, where cacao took center stage. You are invited, perhaps, to a royal banquet, where the air hums with conversation and the rich, earthy aroma of chocolate. The rulers, the ajaw, and the nobility would partake in lavish quantities of chocolate, often served in exquisitely painted ceramic vessels, each a masterpiece in itself. These feasts solidified alliances, celebrated victories, and demonstrated the host's immense wealth and power. Serving chocolate was the ultimate flex, a sign that you had access to this precious commodity and the means to prepare it for your esteemed guests. It's like hosting a dinner party today and serving only rare truffles and vintage champagne, but with more feathers and less small talk about the weather. The preparation of chocolate for these feasts was an art form, a symphony of sounds and actions. You might hear the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of grinding stones, followed by the distinctive whoosh and gurgle as the liquid is poured from a height to create that signature frothy head. This froth wasn't just for aesthetics. It was a mark of quality, a visual representation of the drink's potency. You might even see a particularly skilled server pouring the chocolate from a foot or more above the receiving vessel, a delicate dance that produces the perfect foam. It's a bit like a barista making latte art, but with higher stakes and, arguably, more historical significance. While chocolate was undoubtedly central to elite Mayan life, its presence in the daily lives of commoners was a bit more nuanced. You might not see the average farmer sipping frothy chocolate with their morning tortillas. For them, cacao beans often served a more practical purpose, as currency. We'll dive deeper into that later, but imagine going to the market and paying for your goods with a handful of precious beans. Pretty cool, right? But for the elite, chocolate was an everyday luxury, a morning pick-me-up, perhaps a ritualistic part of their daily routine before embarking on important state affairs. It provided energy, focus, and a sense of connection to the divine, all before noon. It's like their version of an espresso shot, but with a much longer, more storied history and probably a lot more chilly. The sheer reverence for cacao is also evident in the widespread depiction of cacao pods and trees in Mayan art. You see stylized cacao pods integrated into architectural designs, on pottery, and in codices. One fascinating, albeit slightly quirky, tidbit is that some Mayan vessels specifically designed for drinking chocolate have been found with spouts that force the drinker to sip the frothy liquid first, ensuring they get the full, luxurious experience of the foam before the denser liquid below. It's a testament to how much they valued that frothy texture, a subtle design choice that whispers of their connoisseurship. They weren't just drinking it, they were experiencing it, much like how you might savor the perfect head on a craft beer, or the delicate foam on a fancy cappuccino. So, as the Mayan world embraced cacao, it wasn't just about satisfying a craving. It was about ritual, status, myth, and connection. You feel the weight of its significance, the way it permeated every aspect of their sophisticated society, from the highest echelons of power to the deepest spiritual beliefs. It was a gift from the gods, a symbol of life itself, and a testament to their profound understanding of the natural world. And as we leave the intricate tapestry of Mayan civilization, you carry with you the knowledge that chocolate, in its earliest form, was far more than a sweet treat. It was a sacred elixir, a vital force in a world both ancient and astonishing. As the intricate tapestry of Mayan civilization began to subtly shift, its profound legacy quietly weaving itself into the very fabric of the land, another formidable power was rising in the heart of Mesoamerica, ready to claim its own unique relationship with the sacred cacao bean. You now find yourself transported to the bustling, vibrant, and undeniably imposing world of the Aztec Empire. This was no small kingdom. It was a sprawling, sophisticated dominion, stretching its influence across vast territories, built on conquest, tribute, and an unshakable belief in the cosmic order. And at the very core of their elite's daily existence, fueling their warriors and connecting them to the divine, was a drink known as zacatl. Forget everything you thought you knew about chocolate, because the Aztec zacatl was a universe away from the sweet, milky bars you might absent-mindedly nibble on today. Imagine, if you will, the deepest, darkest, most unadulterated essence of cacao you can conceive. Then strip away any hint of sugar, any whisper of cream, and you're starting to get close. This was a bitter, intensely potent concoction, a drink that demanded respect, a beverage designed not for comfort, but for power. It was the original wake-up call, long before anyone invented espresso machines or those neon-colored energy drinks that make your teeth hum. You wouldn't find this in a ceramic mug with a cute little foam heart on top. This was serious stuff, consumed by serious people. The very sound of its name, zacatl, derived from the Nahuatl words zocac, bitter, and atl, water, tells you everything you need to know. It wasn't just a drink. It was an experience, a jolt to the senses. Think of it as the ultimate pre-workout supplement for an empire. When you imagine Aztec warriors, those fierce, obsidian-wielding figures adorned with feathers and formidable armor, preparing for battle, they weren't chugging sugary sodas. Oh no, they were downing bowls of this bitter, invigorating elixir. It was believed to impart strength, endurance, and courage. A liquid courage that didn't cloud the mind but sharpened it, focusing the warrior's intent. You can almost hear the rhythmic thump of their drums, the glint of obsidian blades catching the sun, and the quiet, determined sips of men preparing for unimaginable feats, fueled not by caffeine alone, but by a drink steeped in millennia of sacred tradition. For the Aztecs, zacatl was far more than just a pick-me-up. It was a drink of immense prestige, reserved predominantly for the nobility, priests, and, crucially, the warriors. The common folk might occasionally taste it at grand festivals, but for daily consumption, it was an exclusive privilege. You wouldn't just casually whip up a batch like you might a cup of instant coffee. This was a ritual, a profound act. The very act of preparing and consuming it underscored the drinker status within the rigidly stratified Aztec society. If you were sipping zacatl, you were someone important, someone who mattered. It was like having a VIP pass to the universe, only instead of a velvet rope, you had a bitter, frothy drink. One of the most widely cited mainstream historical facts about Aztec cacao consumption revolves around Emperor Montezuma II. It is said that he drank vast quantities of zacatl daily, reportedly up to 50 cups, served in golden goblets. This wasn't just a personal preference. It was a powerful display of wealth and authority. Imagine the logistics of preparing 50 cups of this potent brew every single day, each one meticulously crafted. His personal stash of cacao beans must have been legendary, probably more secure than the gold in Fort Knox, if only because it was far more precious to him. The preparation of zacatl for the Aztecs involved a fascinating interplay of ingredients that would make your modern taste buds do a double take. While the core was always the ground cacao beans, they were often combined with a startling array of spices and additives. You might find chili peppers, giving it a fiery kick that would truly wake you up. Imagine that first sip, bitter, then a slow, building heat spreading through your mouth. Other common additions included vanilla, annatto, for color, and honey, although the honey was usually a very minor addition, not enough to truly sweeten the bitterness. It was about enhancing the inherent qualities of the cacao, not masking them. Sometimes even ground maize was added to give it more body and a slightly thicker consistency, turning it into a hearty, almost meal-like beverage. Now, here's a quirky tidbit for you. The Aztecs believed that cacao was a gift from the god Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent deity. Legend has it that Quetzalcoatl himself brought the cacao tree from the paradise of the gods to humanity, teaching them how to cultivate and prepare it. This divine origin elevated cacao far beyond a mere foodstuff. It was a sacred substance, imbued with spiritual power. Imagine sipping something that you genuinely believe was a direct gift from a deity. It adds a whole new layer of reverence to every bitter, invigorating drop. It's a bit like believing your morning toast was delivered by a tiny, benevolent dragon. Suddenly, breakfast is a spiritual journey. The ritualistic aspect of Zacatl extended to its use in religious ceremonies and offerings. It was poured as libations to the gods, symbolizing wealth, fertility, and life itself. Priests would consume it during sacred rites, believing it brought them closer to the divine, allowing them to communicate with the spirits and gain visions. The intoxicating effect, combined with the other ingredients and the solemn atmosphere, likely induced a trance-like state, enhancing their spiritual experiences. You can almost feel the hushed reverence in those ancient temples, the flickering torchlight illuminating the steam rising from bowls of Zacatl, connecting mortals to the vast, mysterious cosmos. Historians still debate the precise psychoactive compounds the Aztecs might have been seeking, beyond just the caffeine-like kick of theobromine, when they consumed Zacatl in these ritual contexts. Were there other plants added that have been lost to the historical record? Or was the sheer concentration of cacao enough to induce altered states of consciousness? The exact nuances of their spiritual experiences, and how much they were influenced by the Zacatl versus the ritual itself, remain a fascinating area of scholarly discussion. It's like trying to figure out if your dreams are caused by that late-night pizza or just your brain being weird. The Aztec reverence for Zacatl was so profound that they even had a goddess associated with cacao, named Cacao. She symbolized fertility, abundance, and the life-giving properties of the plant. This deep spiritual connection permeated every aspect of cacao's journey, from its cultivation in the fertile lands to its final consumption in the bustling heart of Tenochtitlan. It wasn't just agriculture. It was a sacred art, a conversation with the divine, a testament to the power of a single being. So, as you drift deeper into this ancient world, remember the Aztec Zacatl. It was not a sweet indulgence, but a bitter, powerful, and deeply revered drink. It fueled warriors, honored gods, and marked the status of emperors. It was a potent symbol of power, a connection to the divine, and a testament to the ingenuity of a civilization that understood the profound potential hidden within the humble cacao pod. It reminds us that chocolate has had many lives, many forms, and many purposes, long before it ever found its way into a wrapper. Now, settle back into that comfortable space you found, because our journey takes us deeper into the very heart of chocolate's transformation. You've seen the cacao tree, you've glimpsed its sacred role, but how did those raw pods become the foundation of such revered drinks? It all begins with two meticulous, almost magical steps: harvesting and fermentation. Imagine, if you will, the dense, verdant canopy of a Mesoamerican forest, alive with the symphony of unseen creatures and the humid breath of the earth. You trudge through the rich, damp soil, your eyes scanning the trunks and thick branches of the cacao trees. Unlike apples or oranges, which obligingly dangle from slender twigs, cacao pods are rather unconventional. They cling directly to the main trunk and the stoutest limbs, like colorful, elongated footballs or rugby balls, some smooth and vibrant, others bumpy and mottled. You see them in shades of brilliant yellow, deep crimson, forest green, or even a striking orange, each hue whispering tales of ripeness. It's a bit like finding a treasure chest bolted to a tree, if the treasure chest was full of slimy beans. And some of these treasures are surprisingly high up, playing a subtle game of hide and seek among the leaves. The ancient Mesoamericans, true masters of their environment, knew precisely when to pluck these precious pods. It wasn't just about color, though that was a strong indicator. It was about a subtle change in texture, a slight give to the touch, and perhaps even a faint, sweet aroma that only the most experienced harvesters could detect. You watch as a skilled worker approaches a tree, not with a ladder, but often with a long pole, tipped with a sharp, crescent-shaped blade. This isn't just any stick. It's a tool honed by generations, allowing them to precisely snip the stem of the pod without damaging the tree or the precious fruit. It's a delicate dance, a testament to their profound understanding of the plant, ensuring that the tree would continue to bear fruit for seasons to come. For pods growing lower down, within reach, a careful twist or a sharp knife would suffice. You hear the satisfying thwack as a ripe pod is severed, falling softly to the leaf-strewn ground. It's a moment of quiet triumph, repeated hundreds, perhaps thousands of times, to gather enough of this precious cargo. Once harvested, these robust pods, still intact and protecting their creamy bounty, are carefully gathered. This isn't a job for the impatient. Each pod is precious, each being a future sip of invigorating zacatl. They're brought to a central area, perhaps a clearing in the forest or a designated processing spot near a village. And this is where the first dramatic transformation begins. The pods are cracked open, often with a swift, precise blow from a stone tool or a sharp implement. Imagine the satisfying crack as the tough outer shell gives way, revealing the glistening treasure within. Inside, nestled snugly, are the cacao beans, but they don't look like the dark, roasted beans you might imagine. Oh no, at this stage, they are pale, almost white or light purple, plump, and each one is encased in a thick, sweet, slimy, wonderfully fragrant white pulp. This pulp is called mucilage, and it's absolutely essential for the next step. It's incredibly sticky, a bit like a super sweet, tropical marshmallow goo. You might be tempted to taste it. Go on. A little lick won't hurt. It's surprisingly sweet and tangy, a stark contrast to the bitter bean it surrounds. Now, for the magic fermentation. This isn't a process of simply drying the beans in the sun, though drying will come later. Fermentation is a controlled, biological breakdown of the mucilage, a complex interplay of yeasts and bacteria that are naturally present in the environment and on the pods themselves. Think of it like a very specific, carefully managed party for microscopic organisms. You watch as the beans, still coated in their sticky white mucilage, are piled up. Sometimes they are placed in large, shallow wooden boxes, or more traditionally, on large banana leaves spread on the ground, then covered with more leaves to create a warm, humid environment. Some accounts even suggest they were placed in large clay pots or pits in the earth. The method varied across regions and time periods, and historians still debate the exact duration and specific techniques used by different Mesoamerican cultures, with some suggesting regional variations in temperature and humidity led to distinct flavor profiles. As the fermentation begins, you'll notice a remarkable change. Almost immediately, the pile of beans starts to generate heat. You can feel the warmth radiating from it, a tangible sign that the microscopic party has begun. The yeasts go to work first, consuming the sugars in the mucilage and converting them into alcohol and carbon dioxide. This process is similar to how beer or wine is made, but it's just the very first stage. After a day or two, different bacteria take over, converting the alcohol into lactic acid and then acetic acid. This is why, if you were to sniff the fermenting beans, you might catch a whiff of something tangy, slightly vinegary, and sweet all at once. It's an aroma that evolves from fruity and floral to something deeper, more robust, and distinctly chocolatey, though still far from the finished product. It's a bit like making sourdough, but instead of a starter, you're relying on tiny invisible partygoers to break down the sugars. The smell, well, let's just say it's an acquired taste, like a very, very ripe fruit salad that's decided to go on a spiritual journey. During this crucial period, which typically lasts anywhere from 3 to 7 days, the beans must be regularly turned. This isn't just for fun. It's vital for aeration and even heat distribution. You see workers carefully raking or stirring the beans, ensuring that every single one gets its turn in the warm, fermenting pile. This turning also prevents mold from forming and ensures that the process is uniform. If the beans aren't turned, or if the conditions aren't just right, the fermentation can go awry, resulting in off flavors or even ruining the entire batch. Beyond just removing the sticky mucilage, fermentation is the single most important step in developing the characteristic chocolate flavor precursors. It's during this stage that complex chemical changes occur within the bean itself. The acids and heat penetrate the bean, breaking down cell walls, reducing bitterness, and initiating the formation of compounds that will later, through roasting, become the rich, nuanced flavors we associate with chocolate. The color of the beans also changes, from pale white or purple to a rich, deep brown, a visual indicator that the transformation is well underway. This isn't just a simple cleaning process. It's a profound chemical alchemy. A quirky tidbit: the very best cacao farmers today still insist on natural fermentation methods, often in wooden boxes, because the wood itself harbors beneficial microbes that contribute to the unique flavor profile, a tradition unknowingly carried on from ancient practices. So, as the days pass, you witness the beans shed their sticky coating, darken in color, and begin to hint at the deliciousness to come. They're no longer just seeds. They're nascent chocolate, having undergone their first great trial by fire, or rather, by microbial warmth. This meticulous harvesting and the subsequent, carefully managed fermentation process were absolutely critical. Without them, the beans would remain bitter, unpalatable, and utterly devoid of the complex flavors that would eventually captivate entire civilizations and, eventually, the world. The ancient Mesoamericans understood this intuitively, perfecting a process that modern chocolate makers still strive to master, a testament to their incredible agricultural and chemical ingenuity. You can almost feel the warmth still radiating from the now finished fermentation pile, a silent hum of transformation. Now, after all that meticulous fermentation we talked about, where the cacao beans transform their inner chemistry in those steamy piles, you might think, phew, done. Time for chocolate. Oh honey, if only it were that simple. You see, those fermented beans are still just beans. They're not yet the rich, aromatic foundation for the divine drink the ancients cherished. We're about to embark on the next crucial, and frankly quite artistic, phase, the roasting and grinding. This is where the magic really starts to happen, where the humble bean begins its metamorphosis into something truly special. Imagine yourself standing in a sun-drenched courtyard, perhaps in a Mayan village, the air already thick with the scent of wood smoke from distant cooking fires. In front of you, a low, flat clay griddle, known as a comal, rests over a carefully tended fire. This isn't just any fire. It's a controlled heat source, vital for what's to come. You carefully spread the fermented, now dried, cacao beans across the warm surface. They look a bit unassuming at first, still somewhat pale and dusty from their fermentation slumber. But not for long. As the heat gently permeates the beans, a subtle transformation begins. You'll notice the beans starting to darken, their surfaces developing a rich, almost mahogany hue. And then the aroma. Oh, the aroma! It starts faintly, a whisper of what's to come, then builds into a robust, earthy, deeply chocolatey scent that fills the air around you. This isn't the sweet smell of a modern chocolate bar. Mind you, it's a primal, intense fragrance, hinting at bitterness and depth. It's the smell of pure potential. As the beans warm, you'll hear a soft, almost imperceptible crackle, like tiny whispers from within each bean as its shell begins to loosen and its internal structure changes. This is the ancient equivalent of coffee roasting, but arguably even more nuanced. There's no fancy digital thermometer here, no automated roaster to perfectly control the temperature. This is all done by feel, by sight, by sound, and most importantly, by smell. The roaster, often a skilled woman, would use her keen senses to determine when the beans had reached their peak. Too little roasting, and the flavors would be underdeveloped, perhaps even raw or sour. Too much, and they would burn, turning acrid and bitter, a wasted effort. It's a delicate dance, a testament to centuries of accumulated wisdom passed down through generations. Historians still debate the exact optimal roasting temperature and duration, but what's clear is that achieving the perfect roast was an art form, critical for unlocking the full flavor potential of the cacao. Once perfectly roasted, a process that could take anywhere from a few minutes to an hour, depending on the heat and the quantity, you would swiftly remove the beans from the comal. They are then spread out on a mat or a cool surface to rapidly cool down. This isn't just about preventing them from burning. It's about stopping the cooking process dead in its tracks, preserving that perfect flavor profile you just coaxed out of them. Imagine trying to get that perfect roast without a handy dark roast button, and then needing to cool them down before they turn to charcoal. It's a bit like baking a delicate cake and needing to pull it out at just the right moment. Now, with the beans cooled, you move on to the next step, dehulling or removing those papery outer husks. These husks, while part of the bean, are fibrous and bitter, and you definitely don't want them in your final chocolate. This step is surprisingly meticulous. You take handfuls of the now brittle, roasted beans and gently rub them between your palms, or perhaps lightly pound them with a flat stone. The goal is to crack the husks without crushing the precious cacao nibs inside. As you rub, the husks flake away, revealing the dark, shiny, intensely aromatic inner core, the cacao nib. It's like trying to peel a tiny, stubborn almond, but multiplied by 1,000. You then separate the husks from the nibs, often by winnowing, gently tossing them in the air so the lighter husks blow away in the breeze while the heavier nibs fall back down. Some sources suggest that these husks, though discarded for the primary chocolate drink, might have been used in some communities to make a weaker, less potent beverage for everyday consumption, or even for medicinal purposes, a quirky little fringe tidbit about resourcefulness. It certainly beats letting them go to waste, right? Though I suspect it wasn't quite as delicious as the main event. With a pile of pure, glorious cacao nibs before you, you're finally ready for the ultimate transformation. Grinding. This is where the physical effort really comes in, so get ready for a workout. The primary tool for this was the metate, a large, flat or slightly concave stone slab, often made of volcanic rock, and its companion, the mano, a cylindrical hand stone. These tools, which have been used for millennia across Mesoamerica to grind everything from corn to chili peppers, are the unsung heroes of ancient kitchens. You kneel before the metate, placing a small amount of those fragrant nibs onto its surface. Then, with the mano, you begin to press and roll, grinding the nibs against the metate. The sound is rhythmic, almost hypnotic. A steady, scraping, crushing sound. Scrape, scrape, grind, grind. At first, the nibs resist, remaining coarse and gritty. But you persist, applying steady pressure, scraping the accumulating paste back to the center of the metate. As you continue to grind, something remarkable happens. The friction generated by the stone-on-stone action, combined with the inherent heat from the cacao itself, begins to melt the cocoa butter within the nibs. This is crucial. Cacao beans are naturally rich in fat, cocoa butter, and as this fat melts, it transforms the dry, crumbly nibs into a thick, dark, glossy paste. It's not a one-and-done process. You'll grind the paste, scrape it up, and then grind it again, perhaps adding a few drops of water to aid the process and achieve the desired consistency. Each pass makes the paste smoother, finer, more liquid. You might repeat this process many, many times until the paste is incredibly smooth, almost like a viscous, dark river flowing under your mano. The goal is to break down the cacao solids as finely as possible, ensuring a smooth, luxurious texture for the final drink. This labor-intensive process could take hours, requiring immense strength and patience. Imagine doing this day after day, not for a quick snack, but to create the very essence of your most revered beverage. It's an upper body workout that puts modern gym routines to shame. The final product of this intense grinding is a thick, oily, dark brown paste, often referred to as cacao liquor, though it contains no alcohol. This isn't the sweet, solid chocolate you know, but rather the pure, concentrated essence of the cacao bean, ready to be formed into blocks or cakes for storage, or immediately prepared into the frothy drinks we'll explore next. This rich, unadulterated paste holds all the complex flavors developed during fermentation and roasting, a testament to the ancient Mesoamericans' profound understanding of this sacred bean. You've journeyed with us through the meticulous processes of harvesting the plump cacao pods, witnessing their transformative fermentation, and then the incredible artistry of roasting and grinding those precious beans into a rich, dark paste. Now, as the sun begins its slow descent over the ancient Mesoamerican landscape, casting long, sleepy shadows across the communal gathering space, you find yourself on the cusp of truly understanding the magic of ancient chocolate. Because what good is a perfect chocolate paste if it just sits there, a thick, uninviting sludge? No, the ancients knew better. They knew it needed life. It needed foam. Imagine the scene. You're standing beside a low, stone table, perhaps smoothed by generations of hands, where the freshly prepared chocolate paste, fragrant and potent, awaits its final, dramatic transformation. The air hums with anticipation, not unlike the quiet murmur of a modern coffee shop right before the barista creates that perfect latte art. Only here, the stakes feel higher. This isn't just a drink. It's a performance, a ritual, and a testament to skill. You watch as a server, perhaps adorned with modest jewelry, takes a large, beautifully crafted ceramic vessel, tall and narrow, designed for this very purpose, and carefully spoons in a measure of the rich chocolate paste. Then, with a practiced hand, they begin to add water, often warm, sometimes even hot, infused with spices that whisper promises of flavor. Now, here's where the true artistry begins, where the frothing magic takes center stage. Forget your electric blenders, your fancy milk frothers, your push-button convenience. Those ancient artisans relied on pure physics, practiced technique, and an almost meditative focus. One of the primary methods, and perhaps the most visually striking, involved a simple yet profound act: pouring. You see the server raise one vessel, perhaps a large gourd or another tall ceramic pot, high above a receiving cup or bowl held below. With a steady hand, they begin to pour the chocolate mixture from a significant height, letting gravity do its work. The liquid cascades down, a dark, viscous waterfall, hitting the surface of the liquid already in the lower vessel with a satisfying splish. This isn't a gentle trickle. It's a deliberate, forceful stream. As the chocolate tumbles through the air, it incorporates tiny pockets of oxygen, churning and aerating as it crashes into the liquid below. And then, you see a delicate, ethereal layer of foam begins to form on the surface. It starts as small bubbles, then coalesces into a creamy, golden-brown crown, a stark and beautiful contrast to the dark, rich liquid beneath. The server might repeat this pouring ritual multiple times, from different heights, even from one vessel to another and back again, each pour adding more air, more froth, more texture. It's almost hypnotic, the rhythmic thud-thud-thud of the pouring liquid, the subtle shift in the sound as the foam thickens. You might even hear a soft, almost ASMR-like gurgle as the air is incorporated. It's a testament to patience, a quality we modern folk often find as elusive as a perfectly quiet house with toddlers. But pouring wasn't the only trick up their sleeves. While the molinillo, that beautifully carved wooden whisk, became popular later with Spanish influence, the concept of a frothing stick or batidor existed in various forms pre-contact. Imagine a simple, slender stick, perhaps with carved grooves or a paddle-like end, twirled rapidly between the palms of the hands. You watch as another artisan takes such a stick, plunges it into a vessel of chocolate, and begins to rotate it with incredible speed, their hands moving with a blur of motion. This rapid rotation creates a vortex, drawing air down into the liquid, whipping it into a luxurious foam. It requires a surprising amount of strength and coordination, like trying to rub your belly and pat your head at the same time, but much, much faster. The foam, this exquisite cacaoatl foam, wasn't just an aesthetic flourish. It was the very essence of a quality chocolate drink. For the Mesoamericans, a rich, thick layer of foam was the gold standard, a sign of a well-prepared beverage and, often, a symbol of status. You wouldn't serve a flat, lifeless chocolate drink to a dignitary, just as you wouldn't serve instant coffee to a seasoned barista. That foam signaled care, skill, and the inherent value of the drink itself. It was the visual cue that this wasn't just any ordinary beverage. It was something special, something revered. Beyond the visual, the foam dramatically enhanced the texture of the drink. Imagine sipping a dense, heavy liquid versus one that has a light, airy, almost creamy head. The foam transformed the mouthfeel, making the chocolate feel lighter, more luxurious, and incredibly smooth. It was the difference between biting into a dense brownie and savoring a cloud-like chocolate mousse. This textural complexity added another layer to the sensory experience, making each sip more enjoyable, more complex. Historians still debate whether the preference for foam was purely aesthetic or if there was a deeper, perhaps spiritual, connection to the breadth of the chocolate. And then there's the aroma. The frothing process, by incorporating air, helped to release the volatile aromatic compounds trapped within the chocolate. As the bubbles burst, they carried those rich, earthy, sometimes spicy notes directly to your nose before the liquid even touched your lips. It was an olfactory preview, an appetizer for the senses, intensifying the overall flavor experience. Think of how a good wine is aerated to open up its bouquet. The ancient Mesoamericans were doing something similar, but with far more dramatic flair. It's almost like the chocolate was taking a deep breath before it greeted you. This emphasis on foam is a mainstream historical fact. Ancient Mesoamerican accounts and visual representations consistently depict chocolate drinks with a prominent frothy head, indicating its paramount importance. It wasn't an optional extra. It was the defining characteristic of a properly prepared chocolate beverage. There are countless images on pottery and murals showing figures holding vessels with distinct foamy tops, solidifying its historical significance. Now for a quirky tidbit. Some accounts suggest that the foam itself was sometimes considered the most prized part of the drink, with certain high-ranking individuals or priests being given only the foamy top layer, leaving the denser liquid for others. Imagine being at a fancy dinner party and only getting the foam from your hot chocolate. It certainly puts a new spin on skimming the cream. It highlights just how valued this airy creation truly was. The act of frothing was often a public display, a demonstration of skill and mastery. You might see a dedicated chocolate preparer, moving with fluid grace, their movements precise and economical, creating a perfect crown of foam every time. It was a performance art of sorts, much like a modern-day flair bartender, but with far more historical weight and spiritual significance. The sounds of the pouring, the subtle hiss and gurgle as the foam formed, would have been part of the ambient soundscape of feasts and ceremonies. So, as you drift deeper into this historical reverie, picture the scene once more. The dark, rich chocolate, the skilled hands, the rhythmic pouring, the rapid whisking, and finally, the emergence of that beautiful, delicate foam. It's not just about making a drink. It's about transforming a raw material into something alive, something beautiful, something worthy of gods and kings. It's a testament to their ingenuity, their understanding of physics, and their profound appreciation for sensory delight. The next time you sip a foamy latte, give a quiet nod to the ancient Mesoamericans. They were perfecting the art of the frothy beverage millennia before your local coffee shop even dreamt of a fancy espresso machine. And they did it all without electricity, which, honestly, makes their achievement even more impressive. No burnt milk smell either. Now, as your mind drifts deeper into the ancient world, picture yourself standing beside one of those diligent cacao artisans. You've just witnessed the incredible transformation of the humble cacao bean into a rich, dark paste. But here's where the real magic, and perhaps a touch of ancient culinary wizardry, truly begins. Because while that pure cacao paste was potent, it was rarely consumed on its own. Oh no, the Mesoamericans, with their profound understanding of flavor and function, were the original mixologists, crafting a symphony of tastes that would make your modern-day barista blush. You see, their chocolate wasn't just a drink. It was a canvas, ready to be adorned with a dazzling array of natural flavorings and additives that would surprise, invigorate, and sometimes even heal. Forget your modern-day milk chocolate bar. You're about to experience a flavor profile that's as complex and nuanced as the civilizations themselves. Imagine, if you will, the air around you, thick with the earthy scent of freshly ground cacao, now being subtly, deliciously altered. The first, and perhaps most iconic, additive you'd encounter is chili. Yes, chili. Before you recoil in horror, thinking of a burning inferno in your mouth, understand that this wasn't just about raw heat. The Mesoamericans utilized a wide spectrum of chili varieties, from the intensely fiery to those with more nuanced, smoky, or fruity notes. You might smell the pungent aroma of dried pasilla or the deep, rich scent of ancho chilies, carefully dried and then ground into a fine powder. This powder, a vibrant red or deep mahogany, would then be meticulously blended with the cacao paste. You watch as the artisan, with practiced movements, folds the chili powder into the dark, glossy cacao. The resulting drink, zacalatl as the Aztecs called it, was a far cry from the sweet, comforting beverage you might sip today. Instead, you'd experience a robust, invigorating concoction. The subtle bitterness of the cacao was amplified by the sharp, stimulating kick of the chili, creating a dance on your palate that was both challenging and incredibly satisfying. It's a flavor combination that, to our modern sensibilities, might seem utterly bizarre. Chocolate and chili? Are you sure they weren't just having a laugh? You might wonder. But for them, it was a fundamental pairing. This wasn't just about taste. It was about the feeling. The chili provided a stimulating, almost electrifying sensation, believed to enhance focus and provide an energy boost, making it the perfect drink for warriors before battle or for rulers during long, important deliberations. Mainstream historical fact: the Aztecs, in particular, highly valued the stimulating properties of chili-infused chocolate, often reserving it for their elite soldiers and nobility. It was their equivalent of a supercharged energy drink, only, with significantly more historical gravitas and less artificial coloring. Then, your nose catches a different, more delicate aroma, one that is both familiar and exquisitely exotic: vanilla. Long before it graced your ice cream or your morning latte, vanilla, specifically the Tlaxcala orchid, was a prized flavoring in Mesoamerica. Originating in the tropical forests of what is now Mexico, the vanilla bean, with its intoxicatingly sweet and floral fragrance, was a luxury item, often reserved for the most elite chocolate preparations. You might see the long, dark, cured vanilla pods, carefully split open to reveal their tiny, aromatic seeds, which are then scraped out and painstakingly ground into the cacao mixture. The contrast with the chili is striking. Where chili was a fiery declaration, vanilla was a soft, fragrant whisper, adding an elegant sweetness and a smooth, almost creamy finish to the otherwise intense chocolate. It's like they designed a palate cleanser within the same drink. Imagine the sophisticated blend: the initial jolt of chili, followed by the comforting embrace of vanilla. They were basically the original floral baristas, long before your local cafe started putting lavender in everything. But the flavor journey didn't stop there. Oh no, the ancient Mesoamericans were true experimentalists. You might notice the addition of maize or corn, often ground together with the cacao. This wasn't just a filler. It added a subtle starchy texture and a mild, earthy sweetness, helping to thicken the drink and create a more substantial beverage. It also connected the cacao to another foundational food source, reinforcing its sacred status. You might see the artisan carefully measuring out precise amounts of dried corn kernels, which would then be roasted and ground alongside the cacao beans. Historians still debate the precise ratios and purposes of maize in various chocolate preparations. Was it always an intentional flavor or sometimes an extender for less elite versions? The truth, like many ancient recipes, likely varied greatly depending on region, occasion, and who was doing the stirring. Beyond these staples, the range of additives was truly astounding. Picture yourself observing the meticulous inclusion of honey or agave nectar, not for overwhelming sweetness, but to gently balance the inherent bitterness of the cacao, especially in preparations for the nobility or for specific ceremonial purposes. You might even catch a glimpse of the vibrant reddish hue imparted by achiote or annatto seeds, a natural dye that also adds a subtle, peppery flavor, making the chocolate not just taste good, but look absolutely stunning. Because, let's be honest, presentation matters, even when you're sipping a sacred beverage in a steamy jungle. Then there were the flowers. Yes, flowers. The Mesoamericans were deeply attuned to the aromatic properties of their native flora. You might see the delicate petals of Simpasicil, the marigold, known for its bright, citrusy notes, or the fragrant Flor de Mayo, plumeria, lending a sweet, almost tropical perfume. But here's a quirky tidbit for you. One of the most intriguing floral additives was huanacazli, also known as the ear flower or Mexican pepper leaf. This isn't your garden variety bloom. It has a surprisingly savory, almost peppery and woodsy flavor, completely unlike what you might expect from a flower. Imagine that: a chocolate drink with a hint of something that tastes vaguely like a forest floor after a rain shower, but in a good way. It's like they were designing drinks for a future food critic who had seen it all. Other spices and herbs also found their way into these ancient chocolate concoctions. You might detect the warm, slightly sweet notes of allspice, or the subtle pungency of certain native peppercorns. Each addition was carefully considered, not just for flavor, but for its perceived medicinal or spiritual properties. Chocolate, as you'll recall, was often seen as a powerful medicine, and these additives only enhanced its perceived potency. You might imagine a particular blend being prepared for someone suffering from fatigue, infused with stimulating herbs, or another, designed for a spiritual ceremony, featuring specific aromatic flowers meant to enhance a meditative state. The sheer sophistication of these flavor combinations is truly remarkable. These were not random additions. They were the result of centuries of experimentation, observation, and a profound connection to the natural world. The artisans were not just cooks. They were chemists, herbalists, and artists, carefully balancing bitter with sweet, hot with fragrant, creating a multisensory experience that transcended mere sustenance. So, as you picture these ancient chocolate makers, you're not just seeing someone stirring a pot. You're witnessing the birth of a complex culinary tradition, a testament to human ingenuity and a palate far more adventurous than we often give them credit for. They truly understood that the path to flavor nirvana often involved a little bit of everything, especially when it came to their beloved cacao. As the gentle hum of ancient life fades a little further into your imagination, you find yourself drifting into a fascinating aspect of Mesoamerican cacao that often gets overlooked by our modern, sweet-toothed sensibilities. You see, long before chocolate bars graced supermarket shelves, cacao was a serious business, often prescribed with the gravitas of a modern pharmaceutical, though perhaps with a bit more ritual and a lot more bitterness. You're now stepping into the ancient apothecary, where the humble cacao being transformed into a potent elixir of health and vitality. Imagine, if you will, a Mesoamerican physician, or perhaps a skilled shaman observing a patient. This isn't your typical doctor's office with bright lights and ergonomic chairs. Instead, you might be in a cool, shaded dwelling, the air thick with the scent of herbs and earth. The patient, perhaps suffering from a persistent cough or a fever that saps their strength, looks to the healer with trust. And what does this healer often turn to? Our old friend, cacao. You see, the ancient peoples weren't just enjoying chocolate for fun. They were leveraging its perceived medicinal power, believing it could cure ailments and impart the kind of robust strength you might need to, say, chase a jaguar or build a pyramid. Or, just get through Tuesday. One of the most common applications of cacao in ancient medicine was for stomach and digestive issues. You can almost picture it. A persistent rumble, a feeling of unease after a meal, and then the healer prescribes a cacao concoction. It was believed to soothe upset stomachs, aid in digestion, and even act as a mild laxative. Now, if you've ever had too much of that rich, modern dark chocolate, you might have experienced some of its digestive efficiency firsthand, so perhaps the ancients were onto something there. They weren't just guessing. They were observing effects over generations. For instance, a mainstream historical fact is that Aztec codices, like the Badianus manuscript, explicitly list cacao as an ingredient in remedies for various gastrointestinal complaints, often mixed with other herbs. It wasn't just a folk remedy. It was documented. But cacao's medicinal reach extended far beyond the belly. You'd find it prescribed for fever, often mixed with water and other cooling ingredients to bring down body temperature. Imagine the relief as the cool, slightly bitter liquid passes your lips, offering a moment of respite from the heat of illness. It was also used as a topical treatment for wounds and skin irritations. Picture a poultice, a thick paste of ground cacao mixed with other soothing botanicals, carefully applied to an injury. The rich oils in the cacao might have offered some protective barrier, and perhaps other compounds helped with inflammation. It's a far cry from your modern antiseptic cream, but in a world without pharmacies, you used what nature provided, and cacao was nature's superplant. Beyond physical ailments, cacao was a go-to for invigorating the body and mind. Think of it as the ancient world's energy drink, but without the neon colors and questionable ingredients. Warriors would consume cacao before battle, not just for its ritualistic significance, but for the burst of sustained energy and focus it was believed to provide. You can almost feel the surge as you drink it, a subtle hum beneath your skin, sharpening your senses. This isn't surprising when you consider that cacao contains compounds like theobromine and caffeine, natural stimulants that gently awaken the system. It's like a warm hug for your brain, telling it, "Hey, let's get things done." without the jittery rush of too much coffee. And speaking of focus, cacao was also used to combat fatigue and improve mental clarity. Imagine being an ancient scholar, perhaps poring over complex glyphs or astronomical charts late into the night. A cup of cacao would be your companion, helping to ward off sleep and keep your mind sharp. It was the original study buddy, long before highlighters and energy shots existed. Some ancient texts even suggest it was used to alleviate symptoms of depression or melancholy, offering a gentle lift to the spirits. You might call it the original happy hour drink, though perhaps a bit more earthy and less boozy than what you're used to. Now, here's where things get a little quirky. A fringe tidbit often mentioned in ancient texts is the belief that cacao, particularly when combined with certain hallucinogenic plants, could facilitate spiritual journeys or aid in divination. While this wasn't purely medicinal in the sense of curing a physical ailment, it was certainly a form of mental and spiritual healing or exploration, guided by the shaman. It implies a deeper understanding of cacao's psychoactive properties, not just its physical effects. You probably wouldn't find that in your local drugstore today, unless it's a very alternative kind of drugstore. The preparation of medicinal cacao often differed from its ceremonial or everyday consumption. While the fundamental steps of harvesting, fermenting, roasting, and grinding remained, the specific additions were key. For medicinal purposes, cacao was frequently blended with a plethora of other natural ingredients, each chosen for its specific healing properties. You might find it mixed with chili for its warming effect and to stimulate circulation, or with vanilla for its soothing aroma and flavor. Other ingredients included achiote for its vibrant color and anti-inflammatory properties, or various herbs known for their analgesic or antiseptic qualities. It wasn't a one-size-fits-all prescription. The healer would tailor the concoction to the specific ailment, much like a modern pharmacist compounding a custom medication. Historians still argue whether the perceived efficacy of ancient cacao medicine was purely psychosomatic, a strong placebo effect born of deep cultural belief, or if the bioactive compounds in cacao, combined with the other ingredients, truly offered tangible physiological benefits. While modern science confirms the presence of antioxidants, flavonols, and stimulants in cacao, the exact mechanisms and dosages used by the ancients are still subjects of intense research and debate. Was it the cacao itself, or the blend of other powerful herbs, or the belief in the sacred plant, or a combination of all three that brought about healing? You can imagine the academic debates over a cup of, well, probably coffee, not bitter ancient chocolate. The sheer variety of ailments that cacao was believed to address underscores its profound importance in ancient Mesoamerican healthcare. From minor aches and pains to more serious conditions, it was a fundamental tool in the healer's toolkit. It wasn't just a drink. It was a symbol of health, vitality, and connection to the divine natural world. When you consumed cacao for medicinal purposes, you weren't just taking a remedy. You were engaging in a ritual, a plea to the gods, and a deep trust in the wisdom of your ancestors and the power of the earth. So, as you slowly drift further into this ancient world, remember that the next time you enjoy a piece of chocolate, you're not just indulging in a treat. You're partaking in a legacy, a tradition that saw this humble being as a source of not just pleasure, but profound healing and strength. It was the original superfood, long before that term was ever coined, and its power was respected and utilized in ways we are only just beginning to truly appreciate. You're drifting now, aren't you? Good. Let that gentle hum of ancient history lull you further into this fascinating world. We've explored the rich, dark depths of chocolate as a sacred drink, a ritualistic offering, a warrior's elixir. But as the shadows lengthen and your eyelids grow heavier, let's unveil perhaps its most surprising, and certainly its most pervasive, role in Mesoamerican society. Chocolate as currency. Yes, you heard that right. Forget your debit cards, your Venmo, your crisp paper bills. In the bustling marketplaces and grand imperial treasuries of ancient Mesoamerica, the humble cacao bean was king. Imagine, if you will, the gentle rustle of a small woven pouch. You reach inside, feeling the smooth, cool, almost pebble-like texture of dozens, perhaps hundreds of dried cacao beans. This isn't a snack you're reaching for. This is your wallet. This is your purchasing power. You might be thinking, chocolate? Money? That sounds like my dream job. And in a way, it was for some. But it wasn't quite as simple as just grabbing a handful of your favorite candy bar and heading to the market. These weren't sweet treats. They were the very backbone of the economy, a tangible representation of value that permeated every layer of society. Why cacao, you might wonder, as you settle deeper into your pillow? Why not gleaming gold or shimmering silver, as in other parts of the world? Well, the answer lies in its inherent value and its unique characteristics. Cacao was not just delicious. It was difficult to cultivate, requiring specific tropical conditions, meticulous care, and a long growing season. It was also relatively durable when dried and stored properly, unlike perishable foods. And crucially, it was divisible. You could count out 1 bean, 10 beans, 100 beans, or 1,000. This made it incredibly versatile for transactions of all sizes, from a handful of beans for a small basket of fresh produce to vast quantities for larger, more significant purchases. You find yourself now in a vibrant Mesoamerican marketplace, perhaps in the grand city of Tenochtitlan, the heart of the Aztec Empire. The air hums with the chatter of vendors and buyers, the earthy scent of corn masa mingling with the fragrant aroma of exotic spices. You see merchants meticulously counting out beans for bundles of textiles, intricately carved obsidian tools, or baskets overflowing with vibrant fruits. It's a scene of organized chaos, where every transaction revolves around these precious little seeds. Indeed, the Aztecs, in particular, heavily relied on cacao beans as a form of currency, accepting them for taxes and using them in market transactions across their vast empire. This isn't just a fringe historical note. It's a mainstream historical fact that underscores the profound economic sophistication of these ancient civilizations. A single cacao bean could buy you a tamale or a small piece of fruit. For a turkey, you might need about 100 beans. For a well-made rabbit fur cloak, perhaps 100 to 300 beans. And if you were looking to purchase something truly significant like a slave, you could expect to pay anywhere from 8,000 to 10,000 beans. Imagine trying to pay for a new canoe with a giant pile of beans. You'd need a very sturdy basket or maybe a very patient porter, and certainly no credit card machine. This system wasn't without its quirks, of course. Just like any currency, it faced challenges. For instance, the demand for cacao beans was so high that it led to a rather ingenious, if ethically dubious, practice: counterfeiting. Yes, you heard that correctly. People would create fake cacao beans, often by molding clay or even avocado pits into the shape of a cacao bean and then dyeing them brown. These imposters would then be mixed in with genuine beans to defraud unsuspecting buyers. It's a quirky little tidbit that shows just how valuable these beans were and how quickly human ingenuity adapts to exploit a good thing, even thousands of years ago. It makes you wonder how many ancient merchants had to develop a keen eye for the real deal, perhaps even a sniff test. No wonder they were so good at math. Counting all those beans and checking for fakes must have been excellent practice. The economic importance of cacao extended far beyond simple market transactions. It was the lifeblood of the empire. Taxes, for example, were often paid in cacao beans. Imagine the imperial storehouses not filled with gold bars, but with vast quantities of carefully counted, dried cacao beans, ready to be redistributed or used to fund public works, military campaigns, or the lavish lifestyles of the elite. This control over the cacao supply gave immense power to rulers and nobles. Owning cacao plantations was a sign of immense wealth and status, much like owning vast tracts of land or successful corporations today. Historians still argue whether cacao was truly a universal currency, accepted for virtually all transactions, or if it functioned more as a specialized medium of exchange, often used alongside more traditional bartering, particularly for smaller, everyday items. It's a fascinating debate, as it sheds light on the nuances of their economic systems. Was it like our cash, or more like a specialized gift card? Regardless, its widespread use and acceptance across diverse regions and cultures underscore its profound significance. It wasn't just a commodity. It was a deeply embedded part of their economic identity. The concept of cacao as currency also highlights the ingenuity of these ancient civilizations. Without the standardized coinage or banking systems we know, they developed a robust and functional economic framework based on a natural resource. It was a system that relied on trust, careful counting, and the inherent value placed upon this sacred plant. And no, you couldn't just nibble on your savings when you got peckish. That would be like eating your credit card, highly discouraged, and probably not very tasty. As you consider this extraordinary fact, the idea that the very thing we now associate with sweet indulgence was once the equivalent of hard cash, you begin to grasp the multifaceted nature of cacao in Mesoamerican life. It wasn't just food or medicine or ritual. It was power. It was wealth. It was the means to acquire goods, to pay tribute, to sustain an empire. It was, in essence, the ancient world's answer to our modern financial systems, organic and earthbound, yet just as vital. So, as your mind drifts further into the quietude of the night, ponder the weight of those ancient cacao beans, not just as seeds, but as symbols of immense economic power and cultural ingenuity. They clinked in pouches, they were counted in markets, they filled imperial treasuries, and they shaped the very fabric of Mesoamerican society. What a journey for a humble bean, wouldn't you say? Now, as you gently drift deeper into the ancient world, we arrive at a realm where cacao beans transcended mere currency, where their value wasn't just measured in trade or economic might. We're stepping into the heart of Mesoamerican society and spirituality, where chocolate wasn't just a drink. It was a living, breathing part of their very existence, a thread woven into the fabric of their social order and their sacred beliefs. Imagine, if you will, the rich, earthy scent of roasting cacao beans hanging heavy in the air, not just from a bustling marketplace, but from a temple courtyard or a royal palace. This is where chocolate truly came alive. Picture yourself, perhaps, as a silent observer at a grand royal feast, a spectacle of vibrant colors and hushed reverence. You see the ruler, resplendent in jade and feathers, seated at the center. Around them, the elite, nobles, high-ranking warriors, powerful priests gather. For them, chocolate was not a casual indulgence. It was a profound symbol of status and power. You wouldn't find just anyone sipping on frothy cacao at these gatherings. It was an exclusive privilege, a drink reserved for those at the apex of society. Think of it like a VIP lounge, but instead of velvet ropes and bottle service, you had meticulously carved stone vessels and a drink that could literally buy you a kingdom. And let's be honest, for the average commoner, the closest they get to this chocolate was probably the smell wafting over the city walls. Tough break, right? The serving of chocolate at these royal feasts was an elaborate affair. You would see attendants, moving with practiced grace, pouring the thick, dark liquid from one vessel to another, creating that signature frothy head. The sound, a soft, rhythmic gurgle, would be part of the ambience, a prelude to the invigorating, slightly bitter taste. These weren't your dainty teacups. The vessels were often intricately decorated, sometimes depicting gods or mythical creatures, further emphasizing the sacred nature of the drink. To share cacao with the ruler was to share in their divine connection, to be part of an exclusive circle. It was a tangible mark of belonging, a social glue for the ruling class. You might even say it was the ultimate ancient power beverage. No energy drinks needed when you had a cup of this. Beyond the feasting, chocolate played a pivotal role in diplomacy and sealing alliances. Imagine two rival lords, their eyes wary, their words cautious. Then, a beautifully crafted ceramic cup of frothy chocolate is presented. To share this drink was to signify trust, to solidify an agreement, to bind oneself to another in a way that words alone could not. It was a ritual of unity, a shared experience that transcended political tension. It's like shaking hands on a deal, but with a delicious, invigorating beverage involved. Much more civilized, don't you think? Historians still argue whether certain specific cacao rituals were more about social bonding or strictly divine appeasement. But it's clear the lines were often blurred. But the social significance of chocolate pales in comparison to its profound spiritual and religious role. Here, cacao wasn't just a drink. It was a conduit to the divine, a sacred offering, and a participant in the very creation of the world. You'd find cacao beans and prepared chocolate at the heart of countless rituals, from the most solemn ceremonies to the most joyous celebrations. Consider, for a moment, the offerings made to the gods. In Mesoamerican cosmology, the gods were omnipresent, powerful beings who required sustenance and respect. Cacao, being so precious and life-giving, was considered an ideal offering. You would see priests, adorned in their ritualistic finery, pouring chocolate into sacred basins or onto altars, the rich liquid symbolically nourishing the deities. Sometimes, it was mixed with other precious substances, perhaps even a tiny drop of human blood, a symbolic offering of life itself, or pulverized jade. The belief was that by offering something so vital and valuable, the people could ensure the gods' continued favor, guaranteeing good harvests, victories in battle, and the very continuation of life. It's a mainstream historical fact that cacao was intimately linked with fertility gods and the feathered serpent deity, Quetzalcoatl, who was sometimes believed to have brought cacao to humanity. If you were a god, wouldn't you want a daily dose of delicious chocolate, especially if it came with a side of reverence? Cacao was also central to rites of passage and life cycle events. You might witness a baby being symbolically baptized with cacao, anointing them with the essence of life and prosperity. Or perhaps, during a wedding ceremony, the bride and groom would share a cup of chocolate, symbolizing their union and the sweet, or perhaps invigoratingly bitter, depending on your palate, life they would share. It was a powerful symbol of new beginnings and enduring bonds. Now, let's delve deeper into the truly mystical side. Cacao was not just an offering. It was believed to possess transformative properties, capable of altering consciousness and facilitating communication with the spirit world. Priests and shamans would consume chocolate before engaging in divination or prophecy, believing it would enhance their visions and allow them to perceive truths hidden from ordinary eyes. Imagine trying to predict the future after a few cups of bitter, spiced chocolate. Might be a bit of a wild ride, perhaps leading to some truly out-there predictions. One particularly quirky or fringe tidbit is the idea that the foam on top of the chocolate was especially sacred. The bubbles were seen as ephemeral, representing the breath of the gods or the fleeting nature of life itself. Sometimes, priests would even read the patterns in the foam, interpreting them as omens or messages from the divine. It's like ancient latte art, but with much higher stakes than just getting your barista to draw a perfect heart. And when life ended, cacao continued its journey. You would find cacao beans, sometimes even vessels containing the dried remnants of chocolate, buried with the deceased in their tombs. This wasn't just a practical provision for the afterlife. It was a profound spiritual gesture. It was believed that the deceased would need sustenance for their long and arduous journey through the underworld, and what better provision than the sacred food of the gods? It also served as a symbol of their status in life, indicating that even in death, they remained part of the elite. Imagine trying to explain that to your modern-day travel agent. Yes, I'll need a first-class ticket to the afterlife, and please, don't forget the chocolate provisions. The very origin myths of some Mesoamerican peoples entwined deeply with cacao. For the Maya, for example, the Popol Vuh, their sacred book, describes the creation of humanity from maize dough. But cacao, too, held a special place in their cosmic narrative, sometimes depicted as a gift from the gods, or even as part of the primordial landscape from which life emerged. It was more than a plant. It was a divine entity, a foundational element of their world. This deep spiritual connection elevated cacao far beyond its botanical existence, making it an almost living, breathing deity in its own right. So, you see, the social and spiritual significance of chocolate in Mesoamerica was immense, multifaceted, and deeply ingrained in every aspect of life. From the exclusive clinking of ceramic cups at royal feasts, signifying power and prestige, to the solemn pouring of liquid offerings to ancient gods, seeking their favor and guidance, chocolate was truly at the heart of their world. It was a symbol of status, a tool for diplomacy, a conduit to the divine, and a companion on the journey to the afterlife. It was quite simply everything. Imagine, if you will, the gentle hum of the jungle, the rustle of leaves, the distant calls of exotic birds, the very soundscape of Mesoamerica. A world rich with ancient traditions, profound wisdom, and, of course, the sacred cacao. Now, picture a stark, almost jarring interruption to this ancient rhythm. You hear the creak of wooden ships, the unfamiliar flap of sails, and then, the heavy, metallic clang of armor. It's a sound that reverberates through the very fabric of this land, signaling a monumental shift in history, not just for the people, but for our beloved chocolate too. This is the moment, my friends, when two vastly different worlds collided. On one side, the formidable Spanish conquistadors, driven by gold, glory, and fervent religious zeal, stepped onto shores that had known only the rhythms of indigenous civilizations for millennia. On the other, the vibrant, complex societies of Mesoamerica, with their intricate social structures, advanced astronomical knowledge, and a deep reverence for the natural world, including the humble cacao bean. It was a clash of titans, or perhaps more accurately, a clash of utterly disparate realities, like trying to explain the internet to someone who still thinks the fastest way to communicate is by carrier pigeon. You just know there's going to be a few misunderstandings. When the Spanish first encountered the indigenous peoples, they naturally observed their customs, their diets, their rituals. And what did they see? A dark, frothy, often bitter drink, served with great ceremony and consumed with evident reverence. This was, of course, zacatl, the very beverage we've been exploring. You can almost feel the conquistadors wrinkling their noses. These were men accustomed to wine, to bread, to the familiar comforts of European cuisine. This strange, unsweetened brew, sometimes spiced with chili, sometimes thickened with maize, must have been a shock to their European palates. It wasn't exactly a sweet, comforting hot cocoa they were used to, was it? More like a robust, unsweetened espresso shot, but with a kick that could wake you up faster than a cold shower on a Monday morning. Initially, their reaction was, shall we say, less than enthusiastic. They saw it as a curious native concoction, perhaps even a bit barbaric. Some accounts even suggest a degree of suspicion, as if this dark liquid might be some sort of potent, perhaps even dangerous potion. After all, it was consumed by warriors before battle, by priests during sacred rites. Clearly had power, but what kind of power? It probably tasted like a very earthy, slightly spicy, bitter concoction to them, a far cry from the sugary delights they would later create. It's like offering a child who's only ever eaten candy an unsweetened, artisanal dark chocolate bar. You know the look you'd get. That was probably the conquistadors' face. However, as the Spanish began to establish their presence, they started to understand the immense value and significance of cacao. They observed its use as currency, its role in trade, and its profound social and spiritual importance. It wasn't just a drink. It was intertwined with the very fabric of Mesoamerican life. And while the taste might have been a hurdle, the power of the bean, its invigorating properties, its ability to sustain and fortify, slowly began to intrigue them. Think of it as a very slow burn appreciation, like learning to love jazz after a lifetime of pop music. The true turning point, the moment that began to transform Mesoamerican chocolate for the world, was, perhaps predictably, the introduction of sugar. You see, the Mesoamericans had their own ways of sweetening honey, agave nectar, but these were often used sparingly or for specific preparations. The Spanish, however, had a deep-seated love affair with sugar, a commodity that was becoming increasingly available through their vast colonial enterprises. And when they added sugar to zacatl, along with other familiar spices like cinnamon, anise, and even black pepper, something magical happened. The bitter edge softened, the rich, complex flavors of the cacao were enhanced, and suddenly, this exotic beverage became something undeniably appealing to the European palate. It was like finally adding cream and sugar to that super strong coffee. Suddenly, it's not just palatable, it's delicious. This simple addition of sweetness was the key that unlocked chocolate's global destiny. The story of how chocolate actually made its way across the Atlantic is a fascinating one, shrouded in a bit of historical mist, which is why scholars continue to ponder the precise individuals or sequence by which chocolate was introduced to Spain. Was it Hernán Cortés himself, returning from his conquests, bearing cacao beans as a curiosity or a tribute for Emperor Charles V? Or was it more likely the diligent friars, particularly Dominican and Jesuit monks, who, while evangelizing in Mesoamerica, observed the use of cacao, understood its value, and sent samples back to their monasteries in Spain? These religious orders, often at the forefront of botanical and medicinal studies, were keen observers and experimenters. It's quite plausible that they saw the potential for this invigorating beverage, perhaps even for medicinal purposes, long before the wider European public caught on. Imagine a monk, meticulously grinding cacao beans in a quiet monastery courtyard, far from the tropical jungles. A tiny piece of Mesoamerica transplanted to the European landscape. Regardless of the exact courier, cacao beans, along with the knowledge of how to prepare them, gradually made their way to Spain. Initially, chocolate remained a closely guarded secret within the Spanish court and among the wealthy elite. It was exotic, expensive, and considered a luxury item, a novelty from the New World. You wouldn't just find it in your local corner store. It was more like a rare, limited edition designer handbag, only for those in the know, and with pockets deep enough to afford it. It was often consumed in a liquid form, much like its Mesoamerican ancestor, but now sweetened and spiced to European tastes. From Spain, chocolate's popularity slowly but surely spread across Europe. It traveled through royal marriages, diplomatic gifts, and the burgeoning trade routes. When a Spanish princess married a French king, for instance, she brought her chocolate-making secrets and her love for the drink with her, introducing it to the French court. Soon, chocolate houses began to spring up in major European cities like London, Paris, and Amsterdam. These were the precursors to our modern coffee shops, places where gentlemen and ladies could gather, socialize, and indulge in this fashionable new beverage. It became a symbol of status and sophistication, a drink enjoyed by philosophers, artists, and aristocrats. And by this point, it was a far cry from the bitter, frothy zacatl of the Aztecs. It was thick, sweet, and rich, often flavored with vanilla, which, incidentally, also came from Mesoamerica, but was cultivated differently by the Spanish and other European spices. One fascinating, if slightly quirky, tidbit from this period is the ongoing debate among European theologians and physicians about chocolate's properties. Was it a food or a drink? Did it break the fast during Lent? Was it a stimulant, an aphrodisiac, or a medicine? Some doctors even prescribed it for various ailments, while others warned against its supposed dangers, fearing its stimulating effects. It was a whole scientific and religious brouhaha over a simple bean, proving that humans have always loved to overthink their food. Does this dark, delicious liquid count as breaking my fast, Father? It's a question that probably led to many a furrowed brow and lengthy theological discussion. Meanwhile, back in Mesoamerica, the arrival of the Spanish had a profound and complex impact on the ancient art of chocolate making. The indigenous peoples, now under colonial rule, continued to cultivate cacao, but the dynamics shifted dramatically. Cacao became a major cash crop for the Spanish, who established vast plantations, often relying on forced labor. The spiritual and ritualistic significance that had permeated every aspect of cacao's life in Mesoamerica began to erode under the weight of European economic demands and religious suppression. While some traditional practices persisted in remote communities, the overarching narrative became one of commodification. The sacred bean was now primarily a commodity for export, destined to satisfy European palates, rather than to fuel ancient rituals or serve as a sacred currency. This shift, from a sacred, culturally embedded foodstuff to a global commodity, marks the true transformation. The Spanish didn't just introduce sugar to chocolate, they introduced chocolate to the global economy. This pivotal moment set the stage for chocolate's journey around the world, eventually leading to the myriad forms we enjoy today, from bars to bonbons, from powders to spreads. It was the beginning of chocolate as we know it now, a sweet, universally adored treat, forever changed by that initial encounter on Mesoamerican shores. The ancient art was adapted, reinterpreted, and ultimately launched onto a global stage, forever altering its destiny and ours. And so, you find yourself drifting back from the sun-drenched plazas and bustling markets of ancient Mesoamerica, leaving behind the echoes of ceremonial drums and the rich, earthy aroma of zacatl. The Spanish arrived, certainly, and with them the world began to change, but the story of chocolate doesn't end there, not by a long shot. Oh no, what the Mesoamericans birthed, the world eagerly adopted, transforming it into something both familiar and utterly alien to its original creators. You see, the legacy of that bitter, frothy drink, once reserved for gods and kings, is astonishingly, wonderfully, inescapably everywhere today. Imagine, for a moment, the sheer audacity of those early European explorers. They encountered a drink so vital, so revered, yet so unlike anything they knew. It was bitter, often spicy, and certainly not the sugary delight that would later conquer palates across the globe. You can almost hear the initial murmurs of disdain, the polite but firm rejections from those unaccustomed to such robust flavors. "It's invigorating," they might have said, trying to be diplomatic, while secretly longing for a nice cup of sugared tea. But the Mesoamericans had, quite unwittingly, handed them a golden ticket, a botanical marvel that would redefine luxury and indulgence for centuries to come. When cacao beans finally made their way across the vast, rolling expanse of the Atlantic, they weren't just seeds. They were tiny time capsules, carrying millennia of indigenous knowledge within their husks. They arrived in a new world, a world hungry for novelty and exoticism, and slowly, painstakingly, the Europeans began to tinker. They added sugar, of course, because what's life without a little sweetness, right? Then came milk and vanilla and cinnamon. All the familiar comforts that would eventually morph that potent, ritualistic beverage into the beloved confection you might be craving right now. It's quite the Cinderella story, really, except instead of a glass slipper, it was a spoonful of sugar that transformed it. Yet, despite all the sweetening and softening, the fundamental processes, the very heart of chocolate making, remain a profound testament to ancient ingenuity. Think about it. The meticulous harvesting of ripe pods, the careful extraction of beans from their pulpy embrace, the crucial fermentation process that unlocks those complex flavors, the patient drying under the sun, the gentle roasting to bring out the aromatic oils, and finally, the arduous grinding into a rich, smooth paste. Every single one of these steps, perfected over thousands of years by the Olmecs, Maya, and Aztecs, is still absolutely indispensable today. Modern chocolatiers, with all their gleaming machinery and precise temperature controls, are, at their core, simply standing on the shoulders of giants who worked with stone tools and ancestral wisdom. They didn't have fancy pH meters, yet they knew exactly when the fermentation was just right, a skill that still baffles some novice bean-to-bar makers today. It's like they wrote the instruction manual for the entire process, and we've just been adding increasingly elaborate footnotes. One mainstream historical fact that often gets overlooked is just how quickly chocolate became a sensation once it was sweetened. The first chocolate houses in Europe, particularly in Spain and then spreading to Italy, France, and England, became fashionable hubs for the elite. These were the 17th century equivalents of your favorite trendy coffee shop, except instead of lattes, they were serving up rich, hot chocolate drinks. It was a symbol of status, a delicious indulgence, and a far cry from the bitter, unsweetened concoction that had once fueled warriors and priests. The ancient peoples, without any formal scientific training, understood the profound chemistry of the cacao bean. They knew that fermentation was not just about removing the pulp, but about developing the flavor precursors. They understood that roasting, like a magical incantation, transformed the raw bean into a fragrant, complex delight. This deep, intuitive knowledge, passed down through generations, is perhaps their greatest gift. It's an almost humbling thought, isn't it? That the very foundation of an industry worth billions today rests upon the empirical discoveries of civilizations long past, who probably just thought, this tastes better after it sits in a pile for a bit. And what about the enduring echo of their flavor profiles? While modern chocolate is predominantly sweet, you'll find high-end chocolatiers today eagerly reintroducing notes of chili, cinnamon, and even savory spices into their creations, a direct homage to the ancient Mesoamerican palate. Some artisanal chocolate bars proudly boast single-origin beans, celebrating the unique terroir of specific regions, much like ancient connoisseurs might have prized beans from different valleys or growing conditions. Historians still debate the extent to which specific cacao varieties were intentionally cultivated for distinct flavor profiles versus general availability in ancient Mesoamerica, but the appreciation for regional differences certainly seems to be an ancient concept. Even the tools echo through time. You know that frothing magic we talked about, the one that created that beautiful, airy foam? Well, the molinillo, that beautifully carved wooden whisk used to create the perfect froth in ancient chocolate, is still used in parts of Mexico and Central America today. You can walk into a market and find these intricate tools, a direct, tangible link to a tradition thousands of years old. It's a quirky little tidbit, but it reminds you that sometimes the old ways are simply the best ways, especially when they look that cool. Beyond the beans and the tools, the social and spiritual significance of chocolate also subtly endures. While we no longer offer cacao to rain gods, unless your morning coffee ritual counts, which, let's be honest, for some, it probably does, chocolate still marks our most cherished moments. It's the go-to gift for lovers, the comfort food during a bad day, the celebratory treat at birthdays and holidays. It retains an aura of luxury, indulgence, and even a touch of mystique. You wouldn't typically hand out a bag of raw potatoes as a romantic gesture, would you? But chocolate, it just feels right. And let's not forget its perceived health benefits. Remember how it was a medicine, a cure-all, a source of strength? Well, modern science is still catching up to the wisdom of the ancients, diligently researching cacao's antioxidant properties, its potential effects on mood, and its cardiovascular benefits. It seems those ancient shamans and healers were onto something long before anyone even conceived of a peer-reviewed journal. Perhaps they just intuitively understood that something that made you feel so good must also be good for you. It's a philosophy I can certainly get behind, though I wouldn't recommend replacing all your prescriptions with a dark chocolate bar just yet. So, as you settle deeper into your pillow, consider this. Every time you unwrap a chocolate bar, sip a rich hot cocoa, or even just catch a whiff of that familiar, comforting aroma, you are participating in a ritual thousands of years in the making. You are connecting with the ingenuity of the Olmecs, the sacred traditions of the Maya, and the formidable power of the Aztecs. You are a recipient of their enduring legacy, a silent beneficiary of their profound understanding of a humble being that changed the world. It's not just a sweet treat. It's a living, breathing testament to human innovation, cultural exchange, and a truly delicious gift from the past. And for that, we owe them a very quiet, very grateful thank you. Now, as the final echoes of ancient drums fade into the soft hum of the night, allow your mind to gently release the intricate details of cacao's journey. There's no need to grasp at the last threads of history, no need to hold onto every fact or figure. Simply let the story of chocolate, in all its rich, complex layers, wash over you like a warm, comforting wave. Feel the gentle weight of time, the immense span of human ingenuity, and the quiet beauty of a simple being that nourished souls and shaped civilizations. Imagine the soft rustle of leaves in a Mesoamerican jungle, the gentle drip of dew from a cacao pod, the quiet whisper of ancient hands tending to a sacred plant. All these images, all these sensations, are now woven into the fabric of your understanding, a quiet tapestry of knowledge that you carry within you. Let your breath deepen, your muscles soften, and your thoughts become as smooth and flowing as melted chocolate. There's nothing left to do, nowhere else to be, but here, in this peaceful moment, as the vast, sweet history of the world settles around you, inviting you to drift into a quiet, restorative calm. Close your eyes and allow the lingering sweetness of this ancient tale to guide you gently into the deepest, most peaceful slumber.